Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 20 of Daffy's Roundtable. This week is our continuation of the shrimp talk with Theo, and so without further ado, let's dive right back in. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Theo Tsangaris.
The last little tidbit of kind of that I've observed is shrimp in a shrimp-only tank will behave differently than shrimp in a community tank.
That's very interesting.
So shrimp in a community tank, you'll see them walking around the bottom. If there's a lot of predators around, you won't see them as much. They'll learn that. They'll be sort of hiding in darker places. They'll be hiding in the plants. You'll probably see them come out for food. But unless you have lots and lots of shrimp, you won't see them as much. In a shrimp-only tank, and especially a shrimp tank where the generations have been born and have grown up free of predators, their behavior will start to change. And I would think that this is a learned behavior that they understand that they don't need to be as elusive. In my shrimp-only tanks, which I don't see as often, or perhaps at all, in my community tanks, I see shrimp going everywhere at all times. I see shrimp swimming in open water, and I even will see shrimp sort of almost interacting with my presence.
Interesting. How so? Like, do you find they come out sort of to the front of the glass?
A little bit.
That's very interesting.
I don't know, like, if this is like completely credible.
I believe it.
But I have noticed when I am in my fish room that the longer I spend in my fish room, the more the shrimp sort of come up towards the front of the glass.
It's very interesting. So, just a quick caveat or whatever you want to call it here. You obviously have heard the term like goldfish brain, and like people saying like fish are very stupid and no personality and whatever. And I've mentioned this a few times before, and I've had people comment like no way or whatever. But all my fish know who I am.
Oh yeah.
100% know exactly who I am, and they will come out to the front of the glass and eat. I haven't. So unfortunately, I no longer keep any shrimp only tanks. You see both my red cherries are with the newts, and the yellows are with the peacock gudgeons. So I also have seen to a certain extent, not to the extent you're describing, but to a certain extent the difference in behavior. But it's interesting to me that, and I completely believe it, that shrimp would also learn this and come off to the front.
No,
and
yeah, it's very minor, so I it's not as much as like other animals
for sure.
And yeah, goldfish brain, like the more you work with animals, the more you find on many metrics humans aren't so smart.
I agree.
But yeah, you gotta look close. You gotta look very closely, and these little things, they've got a lot going on. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Very, very cool. Okay, and then another big topic that we definitely have to dive into is like food and supplementation, all of that. But before we do that, when I was at your house and we that video that I was talking about earlier, where we fed the shrimp with bashi, I believe you put it into a little disc or a bowl kind of thing, and I've seen this like if you watch Flip Aquatics or any of the big shrimpers on YouTube, you see this little bowl. So do you want to talk about that bowl a little bit? What's the advantage?
Should have mentioned that when we were talking about building tanks. So like a lot of us like to have like a little deli cup or a little glass bowl where you're actually putting the food directly into it, and that prevents the food from sort of just breaking down and entering your substrate. So I don't grab a vacuum at all or very much because all of my food is going directly into a nice little convenient bowl. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing.
Okay.
Obviously.
It's not as natural as
Yeah,
everything
of course,
else in there, of course.
A funny little comment, like one time I had like a little fish trap in my saltwater tank. It's like this plastic bottle, and my friend was like, "Oh, you're trying to replicate the natural ocean." Yeah, so on my shrimp only tanks, where I'm not looking to have some type of award-winning aquascape, I like to use a little bowl that I put the food directly into, and if I need to pull out the food if they're not interested, which is rare, I can just easily go in, pull it out, remove the food, put the bowl back in. So yeah, I think the bowl is useful, not necessary. And yeah, in that tank, that video, I can't remember because I've sort of messed around with that tank a little bit since we took that video, but you can also have, like, sometimes I'll just throw it into moss.
Yes.
Something like
was that what the video was? I think it might have been. Yeah.
Yeah. So that tank had 2 sponge filters that were on the sides, bent in to create kind of like a little bridge.
Yes.
And on that one, the bridge, moss is growing, so I put the food onto the moss, and the little particulates kind of sink into the moss.
Yeah. So then all the babies get it.
Yeah. It's not as effective of a preventing food from going everywhere, but it was a kind of cool little feature of the tank that came apart fairly naturally.
It's a beautiful looking tank for sure. Okay, so
it's
then
in ruins now, just so everybody knows.
Oh, is it actually? Yeah.
Well, I've just pulled it completely apart because of our undesirable friends.
Okay, yes, we'll get to those undesirable friends in just a minute. But on the topic of food, how often, first of all, before we talk about what you feed, how often are you feeding? I know you have a little spiel for this one.
Let me start by saying, we are still sort of customer service representatives, and we teach the public quite a bit.
Yes.
So when I talk to a new shrimp owner, or it goes beyond shrimp, I like to test out how hungry my tank is.
Okay.
So say when someone buys 5 shrimp, they're going to need to feed at a frequency that is different than a tank that has 100 shrimp.
Of course.
So I like to put, when I'm talking to a customer, I say, try a small bit of food every 2 or 3 days. If you don't find that your shrimp or your snails or your other fish have too much interest in it, that means that there is enough natural food source growing in the aquarium to sustain the colony. When you start to get a thriving colony, supplementing, they will consume the natural food quickly. So you will need to supplement with something. I feed my thriving shrimp tanks every 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
Yeah. And I like to use, before I was throwing a lot of different things in there, just trying everything, see what's working well.
Yeah.
I'm
kind of at that stage.
I still use a good amount of things,
yeah.
But not everything, because I have found things that I feel that I have observed are increasing the amount of babies that are surviving, and other things that I feel that are just extra.
Pointless, kind of useless.
Yeah, they're still going to eat it, but it's not doing much.
Okay.
So, yeah, shrimp food. The adult shrimp will eat lots of different things. They're scavengers.
Yeah.
In my community tanks, I'll see them grab flakes and scurry off with them.
Similar thing, yeah.
But in my shrimp only tanks, I will use pellets, like kelp wafers. I'll use shrimp specific pellets, and I like to use a lot of rapashi. Okay. Both you and I like rapashi.
Big rapashi fan, yes.
Yeah. They produce good stuff.
Yes, they do. Yes, for everything.
Yeah, and they've got a good sense of humor too, which you got to appreciate.
Yes.
So
what rapashi do you use?
I use a lot of different ones. Everything but morningwood.
Everything.
Like morningwood, we use for the isopods. They used to have a shrimp specific one, but for some friggin' stupid reason, they don't have the shrimp specific one. Apparently not a lot of shrimp people out there.
Okay.
But I do like to use the community one. I use the grub pie. I use the two ones that I think are closest to the shrimp specific one, because I still have an ancient old bottle that is just the bottle for artifact's sake of the shrimp specific one. The goldfish one and the Soylent Green one tend to be the closest ones, I believe. Spawn and grow, I would only use for, I don't use for shrimp, I use it for breeding fish. And morning wood, I use for isopods. I don't use morning wood in fish tanks anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. So I use Repashy fairly regularly. You gotta be careful not to overfeed it, but it is a very good food source. I could just say that the shrimp go crazy for it.
Yeah.
And I think a beneficial part about feeding an important element of food for adult shrimp is the ability for the shrimp to take small portions and run away with it.
Right.
Because if you have like 100 shrimp fighting for one little piece, is not ideal.
Right.
So the Repashy, for those people that don't know, starts as a powder. You mix boiling water into it and it becomes kind of like Jello. So every 2 weeks, I make a new batch of Repashy, and I just fill a deli cup, and I literally walk around my tanks with a spoon and spoon out small portions. And you gotta be careful with using it for all tanks, because it's very easy to overfeed with it. But the shrimp it's nice and soft. They take little pieces of it and they go into somewhere more comfortable with it. Yeah. Whereas if you're using something like a kelp wafer, which I do routinely, you'll find that they're all piling onto it and they're fighting for it. Or I don't think that they're necessarily encountering too much stress doing it, but they're not accessing the food as easy. They're fighting for it. Yeah,
for sure.
So feeding the adults, that's what I use.
Yeah.
I also use several things to improve both the health of the shrimp and how many babies are reaching adulthood.
That was one of my questions for you. How do you increase the survival rate? Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us.
I'm not trying to be a snake oil salesman. I always practice what I preach. I go with a few different products which I feel I have seen have positive effects. So one is powdered foods that you broadcast feed into the tank that go everywhere, that coat the walls and all the surface area for all your little shrimp to get, because oftentimes the little shrimp, even in shrimp only tanks, won't be as bold as the adult shrimp, so they'll tend to hide in places where they feel safe. I want the food to come to them.
Right.
So I use things like spirulina powder, I use baby shrimp powdered food, and I also use a type of powdered food that is for their immune system. So the one that I like to use a lot is Gemchem polycase, I think that's the word. So it is like, I think 3 enzymes in a bacteria culture, something like that.
Interesting.
And it's marketed to increase their immune system. Might be snake oil. That was the one that when I started to use it, I noticed in a short amount of time, I was seeing more babies in the tank and more babies getting older. So there's a relationship in biology that the more babies an animal has, the less are meant to make it to reproductive age.
For sure.
Mammals, we have few babies. Most of them are meant to make it to reproductive age. A invertebrate, like a cockroach say, has lots and lots of babies, and only the strongest genetics, quote unquote, will make it to reproductive age. Right. And that's a good natural selection, so that the strongest genetics make up more of the next generations. In captivity, we remove a lot of these natural pressures.
Right.
We are providing an abundance of food for our animals. We are preventing them from getting sick. So we are removing natural selection to some extent. And I think doing what we can to improve the health of our animals, even if it means that we are preventing animals that in the wild would die, that they survive, I think that's a good thing.
100%.
Yeah. So the powder foods, last powder food, which is also very important, I feel, is something that increases biofilm production.
Okay.
I don't know if we're supposed to be mentioning products.
No,
I've already been mentioning products.
You can go ahead and do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
no, yeah. I was gonna ask you if there's a specific brand that you.
Glass Garden, it's a German brand. It comes in these very sleek little black containers.
I'll bring it up, put a picture. Yes, I agree. Very sleek.
Their best product is, in my opinion, is called Bacter AE, and it is a biofilm supplement. And I also put that into the rotation. And that's another one. You don't want to overdo it, but a little bit goes a long way. And so I use kind of my old burnout brain doesn't work amazingly, but the rotation is every 3 days I put in 2 or 3 days I put in a solid food, and one of the days in between those I put in one of the different powders in my rotation.
Okay.
So I use maybe, we've got 4 or 5 different types of powder. I use it maybe one every week and a half, and I feel that between the different powders, I'm getting more babies to survive.
Very interesting.
Yep.
I actually had the experience where I ordered this food from China and couldn't read anything on the label at all. But
That's
the
the
one
good
thing,
stuff.
yeah, that's the good stuff. And then the one thing that was in English was increased survival rate.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, with using I think it was the polytaste that you said,
Yep.
you immediately saw significant results. That was the one thing that I immediately saw significant results from as well. But then it finished and I could never find it to buy it again. So I assume it's probably the same as what the polytaste does.
Yeah.
That's
So
very interesting.
it's we do what we can.
Yeah.
And some people. That being said, like this is what works for me. Some people don't use anything.
Yeah.
Like some people, I've heard one of our crystal breeders, like she won't feed the tank like almost period, and
That's all?
like minimally, like once every couple weeks.
Wow.
And their her shrimp are amazing. So there's different ways of doing it.
Of course.
I like feeding.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I enjoy the process of it.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
like so
100%.
we get something as humans, it's selfish, we get something out of it.
Yeah.
Feeding our animals, it's our way to interact with them, and we try to improve their lives in what we can.
Exactly.
Yeah. So powders, solids.
Yeah.
The other thing that people tend to put them in their lineups is botanicals.
Right.
So
And this is something you commonly hear, like every shrimp tutorial or anything about setting up a shrimp tank, you always hear Indian almond leaves. So, why?
almond leaves are great.
Okay.
I
Botanicals in general.
Yeah, so there's a lot of botanicals, first of all.
Yeah.
Like, I've used many, and now I use only a few different types. So almond leaves are, it's a common one. We use a lot of it. It releases a lot of botanicals, including wood, will release tannins into the aquarium.
Right.
Tannins make the water dark. They make the water a little bit more acidic. It's tannic acid, and it is a natural antibacterial, antifungal. So we use it with a lot of our sort of Amazonian fish in particular, and Southeast Asian. Doesn't appear in the ocean, but it has a lot of the sort of wise individuals, men and women that I've talked to, will say that it has a lot of effects that are hard to quantify, that it affects their hormones.
Interesting.
And it adds trace elements to the water.
Okay.
So that's hard to really pin down,
Mm-hmm.
but I have definitely seen tannins work very well for bettas and epistos.
I can say the same for tadpoles.
Yeah.
So that's not really.
Yeah. So tannins, and I don't use as many tannins with shrimp as I do with most of my fish, but almond leaves are beneficial for shrimp and where they're not for fish as much, in that any botanical will grow the biofilm on it, and the shrimp, as the leaf breaks down, the shrimp will eat it. The shrimp itself will eat it. So Indian almond leaves, one of the two leaves that I use. The other leaf that I use is mulberry.
Okay.
Mulberry, I'm really, that's the plant that's on the top of my list. I really want to get a mulberry tree.
Like okay, yeah.
Like an actual tree.
Yeah.
The leaves are very desirable to shrimp.
So a lot of animals, I believe.
Yeah, well, like, the silkworms in
Silkworms will
particular,
eat them,
they silkworms need them.
Yeah.
But when you put an almond leaf in a shrimp tank, shrimp won't pay too much attention to it. They'll maybe graze off it a little bit. As it breaks down, you'll start to see the shrimp actually be eating it. Mulberry leaf, I put into a thriving shrimp tank. It's covered with shrimp very quickly.
And it's gone very quickly too, probably.
Yes.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So mulberries also tends to be like a finer leaf, but yeah, it's a food source. So it doesn't have as much tannins, but the shrimp eat it. And I don't know as much about how it benefits their nutrition, but they seem to like it, so I like to give it to them.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. The last botanical that I like to use are alder cones. And there's other cones out there.
Yeah.
But the cones both have a good amount of tannins. They're pretty.
Yes.
And their structure, like if you think of a cone, they're the little like sort of pointy parts of a cone they call a scale. So if you think of it, it has a lot of surface area.
Yeah.
And the particles of food that go by get trapped in the little scales.
Yeah.
So you'll actually see shrimp digging into the scales and pulling bits of food out of it.
Okay.
So cones, you don't want to use too much of them because they will also add tannins. Too much tannins you got to be careful with. But I do like to routinely, every month or so, add some cones to all my shrimp tanks. I do see them actively using the cones.
And do they completely disintegrate like the Indian almond leaves and the mulberry?
For me, they disintegrate fairly slowly.
Okay.
Jay has talked about cones breaking down very quickly. He's seen. I have not seen them break down as quickly. They do eventually become almost like you can see like almost like the spine of the cone.
Yeah.
Eventually they will become consumed. But for me, I'll see cones in there for multiple months, like generations of cones.
Yeah.
And I'd say that they're probably, even when the shrimp are consuming the actual material of the cone, it's probably beneficial to them.
Beneficial to them. Very interesting. Yeah. No, I only ask because I also use the cones again for my tadpoles, and the first cone I've ever put in is probably still somewhere around one. I've never had it break down like leaves, so I really do enjoy them as well. And I find it easier because also when the leaves break down too much, they also create a bit of like mulm on the bottom that the cones don't. So that's another thing. And again, you mentioned bare bottom tanks, so that where I can avoid that, I really try. Yeah, 100%. That's very interesting. And then so that I guess pretty much you just covered everything on feeding shrimp. Is there any of the powdered, not powdered, any of the solid foods besides ripashi and kelp wafers that you recommend?
They'll eat anything.
Okay.
Yeah. So
can confirm.
like just about anything. I wouldn't put like pizza in there, but like
why not pizza party?
Yeah. No. So sometimes I want to pour coffee into there, but I've resisted that urge.
Yeah.
They like blanched cucumber. They like blanched zucchini. People use sweet potato. I see lots of crazy stuff going into there. Like I've seen people like using watermelon, lots of interesting stuff. And I'm sure like any animal can benefit from a diverse nutrition. But just because I think I've got a lot of different projects,
Yes, yeah.
I just like to sort of
Yeah.
standardize it. I don't use as much fresh vegetables and foods in my aquariums.
So you have to come back and pull them out. That's why.
Yeah, that
it's-
too.
Yeah.
That too. Yeah. So I'd rather just like I do use a lot of things, like
Yeah.
a good amount of
For
things.
sure, yeah.
But I have slowly begun to restrict what I use, so that my hobbies or my passions are a little bit more efficient and don't take up a huge amount of my free time. Although both you and I talk about how we enjoy taking care of
The
our
free time, yeah,
animals.
100%,
me and
yeah.
you, we both have a science background.
Yes.
We both enjoy
The actual care as
yeah.
well. Yeah.
So
It's not just about having the animals. It's the process and the learning and about keeping them as well, and the
Yeah.
research, everything. Yeah, 100%.
and we both evolve, right? We all evolve. So who knows?
Beautiful.
Next year might have slightly different strategies, but
We'll have to do a shrimp part 2 and then talk about those different strategies then. Yeah, awesome. Okay, and then so we've mentioned already a few times over the span of this episode the evil undesirables. So there's quite a few of them. I think personally I've had most of them or experience with most of them in both shrimp tanks and not shrimp tanks. I assume it's the same thing for you. Do you want to maybe break down the ones you're most or the worst 3 or however you want to split them up? Or...
Yeah, well, it's part of the beauty of a shrimp tank is that you have a lot of biodiversity accumulating because you don't have predators to control all the little creatures that are living in your aquariums.
Right.
So things like detritus worms, they happen, or they exist in basically all aquariums. In my perspective, they are good guys. I don't mind seeing little detritus worms in the aquarium. Planaria, which are triangular headed flatworms, although there are many different types of flatworms, have a bad reputation that many of us wonder if the bad reputation is really deserved.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a lot of different things about them, and I think the most common, this is my experience and perspective, I think the most common forms of planaria will not attack living animals.
Okay.
I've
never seen it either.
I've seen it once. I've seen one time we got a bag of shrimp from a larger distributor, and there was a worm on one of the shrimp. I didn't see a triangular head. So this is where I think that there are many different species,
Okay.
or I know that there are many different species, and some act differently than others. I don't believe planaria are going to go after living shrimp. I don't even really think that they would go after a molting shrimp. I don't think. Some people also say that they secrete something that may be not good for shrimp, or when like planaria are on the food, that they make the food not as great for shrimp.
Interesting.
I don't freak out when I see planaria.
Okay.
If I see a population of planaria increasing in a tank, I start to consider taking action because they are consuming the resources that the shrimp that
Like
I
trying to
want the shrimp.
outcompete with the shrimp.
Yeah. So planaria are also extremely easy to deal with. There are multiple products out there that, if you follow directions, will kill planaria without hurting your shrimp.
Okay.
It's the same with like a lot of pathogens where you want to treat it and then wait for a couple weeks or a week for the next generation to hatch, because maybe the treatment kills the adults and not the eggs.
Yeah.
And then you treat it again and kill them. I think the danger of treating planaria is when you use something like that, say it kills everything that doesn't have a shell, you suddenly have a lot of dead things in your tank.
Right.
So the decay of all these animals can pollute your water. That's why it can be dangerous. That's why you follow the directions, you do your water changes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't worry about planaria.
So you don't treat for it when you see it?
When it's accumulating, I do.
You do.
If I see one or two flatworms, like, don't care.
Cool.
Hydra
It's
are the
one of
next on my list.
Plant kind of looking one, right?
Yeah, Hydra are little anemones.
Yes.
So it's like a little body with a suction cup on the end. You'll see it attached to any surface. And like an anemone, it has like a flower of stingers.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never seen a Hydra kill an animal. I think they're going after microscopic things, or very small things. But I have seen, one time in particular, I saw a snail go by, get stung by the Hydra, and curl up and fall down.
Okay.
And people say that when an animal gets stung by a planaria or by a Hydra, that's a wound, and that wound can be infected. So planaria for me, one threat level higher. When I see planaria,
You mean Hydra?
oh yeah, sorry, Hydra one step above planaria.
Okay.
When I see it, I put it in my schedule to dose the tank. And Hydra also very easy to deal with.
What do you dose with?
I use no planaria.
No planaria for Hydra as well?
Yep,
Okay.
kills them too.
Yeah.
Some people will use like a little airline tubing, start a suction, and start pulling them out.
That's what I do.
Yeah, I just don't think
a
it's that
headache.
effective.
It's not. I tell you, it's not worth it.
Like you're not killing all of them. You're
not worth
taking
it.
a bunch of it. Just use no planaria. It's expensive, or it's got a cost, but it's good to have in your arsenal for when you need to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
No planaria. They say it can affect snails negatively. I really haven't seen it affect snails negatively.
Okay.
I do try to pull out the snails that like
That matter to you.
like the nice red
expensive
ram's
ones.
horns.
Yeah.
I try to bait them, pull them out, put them into another tank.
Yeah.
But no planaria is effective.
Okay. Let me tell you how I deal with Hydra.
Okay.
Because I had a period when I set up these, whatever, I can't count right now, five gallons. I got Hydra in all of them at the same time.
Mhm.
And I was doing the whole, and it was pointless. And I didn't want to put any chemicals inside because I had a lot of baby fish in them. Because I was just raising, in these two, and the other two I was raising pistos, and these two I was raising killifish. So I didn't want to do that. I just lessened the feeding, increased the water changes, and I kind of let it ride out. And I got more Hydra than I had ever seen in my entire life. And then within 3 days, all of it was gone.
Really?
I feel like it's
The resources, maybe?
crashed, like used up all the resources, boomed, and then population crashed. Because I lost them in all my tanks almost within a 2-week span. They boomed and gone from all the tanks.
Okay, so were there fish in that tank, in those tanks?
Not fish big enough to eat Hydra. Like I'm talking like baby epistos, baby killifish.
And
like,
you were still feeding the tanks.
that's another thing. I lessened the feeding quite a bit as well.
Okay.
I lessened feeding quite a bit as well.
Huh.
So you know how I feed my baby fish 4 times a day? I was doing once every 2 days at that point.
Okay. Did you observe any fish not doing well because
No.
of the Hydra?
No.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, I okay, so that's another thing. You said you've seen the snail. I've seen that with a shrimp. I've seen a shrimp swim up and kind of land close to the Hydra, and then it'll sting it, and nothing happened to the shrimp. It just kind of swam back. You know how they like, just kind of disappeared in the back of the aquarium. That was it. I've never seen any other negative effect from it,
Yeah. So
other than it looking bad and covering up the entire aquarium.
yeah. So
Yeah.
me and you have similar, but that's the beauty of these things, that me and you have slightly different ways of dealing with it, and we have slightly different perspectives on it.
Yeah. Every aquarium is its own ecosystem for sure. Yeah.
Yep. I just Hydra. It happens. You can deal with it.
So one level above planaria.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a level above that we should be worried
There
about?
is a level above that.
Okay, what is that?
Something that has, like, I got 2 enemies. Well, actually, Duckweed is not as much of an enemy. I can handle duckweed.
I know what your two enemies are.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Everyone that is close to me knows my enemies. So my one enemy is Giba.
Yes.
So
Do you want to maybe quick? What is Giba?
Giba is like a little plant. It's not doesn't bother really anything, but it goes everywhere.
It's really hard to get out of your aquarium when you get
Yeah,
inside it.
So it's taken me some time to remove the Giba from both the store aquariums, which is still an ongoing battle,
Yes.
and my own aquariums, which I have successfully defeated in many of my tanks.
I think I have as well. I fingers crossed, but I believe I have as well.
Yeah. So Giba is not, it's not going to hurt anything.
No.
But it's a pain to deal with.
Right. And it is a plant.
It is a plant.
Right.
It is a bladderwort.
Okay.
It has a little suction, like it looks like a little string with dots.
Yes.
And the little dots is a little like head that is a suction trap. So when a tiny microorganism, not a shrimp, something we can't see, goes by, it sucks it in and eats it.
Yeah.
So it's cool in its own way. A lot of people really like it, and apparently there's a way to like carpet it. I've never really done it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's hard to control.
I wonder if you'd have to do it in the dry start method. Break
Yeah.
up a bunch of Giba and just put it all over the substrate and keep it really
I haven't
humid.
looked into it super much, but apparently, it's
The interesting thing about Giba is the reason, I guess not the interesting, the reason it's impossible to get rid of is because it's very easy. It breaks really easily like guppy grass, so if you leave one part of it in the aquarium, it spreads all over again. So it's kind of, as you said, an ongoing battle.
It fragments, and it's like planaria will do it too. Like if there is a tiny section of this organism, you're still dealing with it.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah. So
your second enemy, which is the one that
my biggest enemy.
your biggest enemy, yes.
That I have all my new shrimp tanks are free of them. My older shrimp tanks had accumulated scuds. So scuds, we'll put a picture, I assume.
Yes, we will. Yes.
Little crustacean, looks like an isopod. They sort of scoot around the tank. Very easy to pick up from plants. They make pretty good fish food, although I don't put them into, I used to kind of use them for my bettas and stuff, but I don't risk it now. They can slowly take over an aquarium. And not only can they take over an aquarium, because planaria can do that too, they are very difficult to get rid of. They have a shell. No planaria does not work on them. I have let tanks go dry in order to defeat them.
As in dry the substrate and everything.
Yeah, just let it go completely dry, and even when it goes dry, when I fill it back up again, I pay close attention just in case. I've never seen them come back, although I've seen Malaysian trumpet snails come back, which I like.
Yes.
Scuds are, I think, dangerous to shrimp. Not only will they breed faster and start consuming the resources more than your shrimp, they say that the female scuds, after they have had babies, are very protein depleted. So they will go after baby shrimp.
Interesting.
And I have certainly seen tanks where the shrimp stop, you stop seeing babies because in my, I think because of the scuds.
Okay.
If the scuds get so bad that they start depleting their own resources, they'll start munching on your plants.
Okay.
Yeah, I've had them rip through grass. They'll eat up your floating plants. They'll destroy moss, and they will even start to eat the more the firmer leaf plants like Anubias and Java fern.
Wow. So I need to get them out of there.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my new shrimp tanks, what I've done is, during my isolation for an unknown virus that we won't mention here, where I almost disabled our
Uh,
store. No one got sick except for me. I spent that time meticulously pulling shrimp out of old tanks, making sure that I didn't bring any scuds, and put them into new tanks. I'm still on the observation phase because
You still don't know if they're gonna come back.
I hope not. I've started 3 new shrimp tanks. All of my, like, I've got 2 tanks that are now, like, the water quality is fine, but the scuds are just completely out of control. And I'm still pulling out baby shrimp, or like sort of the shrimp that are getting bigger.
Yeah.
And I'm feeding it like crazy so that I'm feeding like crazy, doing water changes like crazy, so I can try to save as many baby shrimp as they grow up. But they've done a toll on my psychology.
Yeah. That's funny.
I don't like scuds.
Yeah.
They happen. They occur in our natural freshwater systems.
I was gonna ask, I've heard your eggs occur in our tap water. Is that a myth? Is that true?
I think there's a lot of things in our tap water that the chloramine neutralizes.
Okay.
I've never seen them occur I've never done an experiment, like in any time where I'm propagating a terrestrial plant, where I'm using the tap water. I've never seen like a snail or a shrimp occur, but I would not be surprised if there is biology that is rendered inert from the chloramine, and then us removing the chloramine makes them come in. Because a lot of people like wonder, like on fresh tanks you'll get like detritus worms and stuff like that. So what we're drinking, like we're a part of nature. Like our tap water has got might have some interesting things in it, but
it's very interesting. I will tell you that I have them. I've never seen them. So those 2 bare bottom tanks have them in them because I was using them to feed fish. Because again, they're going crazy in this one. But the new tanks that I've set up, and it's only been like a month or 2, but I haven't seen any, or in general, I'm trying to think back now, I don't think I've seen scuds in bare bottom tanks as much as I've seen them in my tanks with gravels in them. So I wonder if that also maybe
that makes sense. And also, they're not as much of a threat. In fact, they're no threat really in a tank where there are fish.
Right. Yes.
Because the fish, they're a good food source.
Yeah.
It provides sort of stimulation for fish, and
chasing live foods. Yeah.
Yep. Good nutrition.
Yeah.
But in a shrimp tank where the shrimp are not going to eat them, they cause problems. And if you can prevent yourself from getting them and control and really thoroughly control them before they get out of hand, I really recommend it. Whenever I take shrimp home now, like with all my fish, I'm pretty comfortable putting...
Do you store water into your aquariums?
Yes. Yeah. So when we're getting something shipped to us from far away, which we try to limit, local production.
Yes.
We try to remove the water because the water has accumulated a lot of ammonia from the fish or whatever's being shipped, and they potentially put meds in it to slow the metabolism right down so that the fish are potentially arrive better. So I wouldn't put that in my tanks. When I get a fish or a plant from a store, I do quarantine now. I haven't had too many problems, but I do like to keep an eye on things. I quarantine a fish for a couple weeks, but I quarantine them. All of my tanks are planted. I quarantine them in a small aquarium, and I don't mind putting the water in the tank, except with shrimp.
Except with shrimp, and that's because of the scuds.
Yes.
Okay.
After I acclimatize a shrimp, I pour it into a bucket and I remove the shrimp with a net.
Yeah.
I don't like scuds.
That's all.
That's the only reason why I'm very careful, is because I have seen them have a negative impact on the shrimp tank. And yep, they're a natural part of an aquarium, just like snails, just like flatworms. You're getting stuff from people. It's good. It's good to have diversity, but in a shrimp tank, you gotta be more careful.
100%. Awesome. In that case, I think that's about all the questions I had on the shrimp topic. first of all, thank you very, very, very much for coming on. That was a lot of fun, and I personally, I don't know about everyone else, but I personally learned so much more about shrimp than, can you let everybody know where they can find you?
You can find me on Instagram.
He's going to be more active from now on.
I've been saying that for a couple of years, but I'm going to try. I think, I can't remember. My name is Nature State 7.
Yes.
Nature State 7. I chose that name because the state of nature, good old Hobbes, nasty, violent, and short.
I like that.
We like to reverse that when keeping animals captivity, make their lives nice and long, give them abundance, try to make them happy.
I did not know that's why you chose that as your username. That's very interesting. That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, it's not been used too much, but I try. But if not, like, I'm still at Critter Jungle for the time being. I'm in Teachers College, but I'm a people person. I am not.
Confirm.
Yeah, people and non people. We're all animals. And I like plants. The cult of the plant. I think that's where we all fall.
Yes.
Come check us out at Critter Jungle. Yep, and yeah, you don't need to find me. Find yourself.
Find yourselves.
But
Awesome.
yeah, I'd just like to say, like, Freddy, you're awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think you're doing great things.
Thank you.
And I'm just happy to have gotten to know you.
Likewise.
And I like our fishing trips, both down to the river and in a car to Toronto or Montreal. And I hope you'll have me back to talk about something else.
I definitely will, and hopefully we'll start planning that next episode as soon as possible. That's awesome. Thank you very much for saying all that, first of all. Thank you so much for coming on again, and we'll for sure. Cheers. That's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, Nature State 7. I will have all of his info in the description, and like he said, come visit us at Critter Jungle. Maybe set up your own shrimp tank. We'll have him personally give you some advice. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am Daffy's Reptiles on all social media. Daffy's Roundtable. Find the podcast everywhere: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere where you can find podcasts. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one.